As we approach the 24th anniversary of 9/11, we remember those who lost their lives and the families they left behind, and we honor everyone affected by this tragedy. I was 6 years old when 9/11 occurred, and I have vivid memories of watching the towers collapse on TV. As a child, I saw the footage of the hijacked planes hitting the North and South Towers. I saw the towers collapse from the damage, and I never had any reason to think there could be more to that event. Over the years, I've heard rumors that there was something more, something strange that occurred on 9/11, but I never once looked into them until just this year. So I always assumed whatever evidence did exist, that there was something strange going on. I always assumed that evidence must be very small or purely circumstantial. And I did not, never assumed it would be convincing of much. Oddly enough, over 3 dozen structural engineers, as well as over 3,600 architects and engineers, have all signed a petition demanding an official reinvestigation into the collapse of the World Trade Center buildings. These many experts claim that it was impossible for these 3 World Trade Center buildings to be brought down via the plane crashes and the fires. In fact, these buildings were specifically designed to withstand the impact of passenger jets, and they were not supposed to collapse, even if completely burned out by fires. Yet they did collapse. So we have to look into this. Does the official narrative actually explain their collapse, the official narrative that I have believed my entire life? And what does the scientific evidence that exists suggest? What does it actually point to? So even if you hate conspiracy theories, you need to be aware of the very best evidence, if nothing else, just to refute it. If you think the official narrative is 100% the case, the most convincing evidence needs to be made aware of. And the official narrative, in my opinion, and we're going to get into this, does not adequately explain the collapse of the buildings. So this is the very first, most shocking, best evidence that I have found related to this. So many people don't know, but there were 3 buildings that collapsed on 9/11, not just 2, not just the 2 main towers. There was actually a 3rd skyscraper, Building 7. You can see it right here, World Trade Center Building 7, and then down here, World Trade Center 1 and 2. These are the North and South Towers, and you can see it's a little bit north of the North Tower. So Building 7 was a steel-framed high-rise with 47 stories. It was not hit by an airplane, but it collapsed 7 hours after the main 2 towers collapsed. Why did it collapse? Well, the official narrative is the government agency National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST, I think is how you pronounce that, the acronym, NIST. They determined the fires caused it to collapse. Debris from the North Tower, when it collapsed, shot out debris and caught the World Trade Center Building 7 on fire, which is true. It did catch on fire. There's videos of it on fire. So their explanation was the fires expanded the steel beams, weakened the steel beams, and the building collapsed 7 hours after the North Tower collapsed. So that's the official story. But there is a problem, a pretty major problem, and it has layers, and we're going to get into this. So this is the biggest problem. No steel framed skyscraper that is designed like the World Trade Center Building 7, that is built the way this building is built, has ever collapsed from fires in a symmetrical way that Building 7 collapsed. And I'm going to show you this. There is some crazy video proof evidence of this. So that is the problem, is the way that this building collapsed and the explanation that it was fires that caused it. There has never been a case that fires have caused a building like World Trade Center Building 7 to collapse in this symmetrical uniform pattern, which I'll show you what I mean by a symmetrical way here in a second. So this video, this is what I'm going to show you here. This is a 4-year computer modeling study. This was released in 2020 by the University of Alaska Fairbanks. So they did a 4-year study, and this study, whether they sought to do this or not, but this study basically completely disproves the official narrative of how Building 7 fell down. So I'm going to play this video here, and it's going to just repeat over and over again, but I'll explain what's going on here. On the far right, this model over here, this is the NIST official narrative model of how the building collapsed. So their explanation is there was localized destruction caused by fire. So localized fires causing destruction causes the different steel columns to fail right at different times. And you can see that when you look at this video right here. you can see this kind of hodgepodgey, messy collapse of this side collapses, and then it slowly pulls down more of the building, and then the whole thing starts to fall down. So localized fires, weakening steel beams, right? And yeah, so that's their explanation, is that's what causes to fall down. All right. Before I get into the problems, let's take a look at the middle video here. So the middle footage is the actual footage of the real collapse. And you can see a little bit of a difference here. So if you watch it right here, it's about to go down right across the top, falling uniformly. So what it's doing is a symmetrical free fall. And it actually, I'll show the whole video here in a second, but it completely falls straight down, a symmetrical free fall, right into its own footprint. And I'm going to play this back here a second so you can see. Look at this corner on the government's model. See how it starts to fall in right here? Now look at the top right corner, twists and falls in. Look at the actual video footage. There's no twisting, there's no collapsing. It doesn't actually look anything like the government model. It's all the same. And then the whole thing begins to free fall without any twisting, without any complicated localized collapsing. Over here, of course, the explanation is the fires is causing this to be brought down, and that's why it's happening at these different angles, and it starts to twist. You can also notice this is the official government's model. It stops right here, right there. The building is twisting, crunching, moving like this. It doesn't look like the footage, and then it actually pauses, and they don't show the rest of the model. They're like, oh, this is how it starts, and this is actually the official footage that the government has released. This pauses, and it doesn't show the rest of the way that it collapses. And you can see from the way it's collapsing that it's collapsing asymmetrically. It's not collapsing symmetrically like the one here in the middle. So let's show the full collapse right here before I explain the rest of this. You can see just so symmetrical all the way down. There's a little bit falls apart right here on the left side, but besides that, the whole thing is just free falling uniformly, symmetrically, as if the entire structure was just taken out in the same moment. Let's go back to the previous video. So let's take a look. What is this thing going on over here on the left? So this is the Fairbanks model that they did. And you know, this is very different than the model over here. So what they did was they did a 4-year study to try to basically replicate exactly how this building fell. And they did everything they could think of, all the damage, simulated all the kinds of damage, the fires, all the things. And what they determined, there was only one way for them to get their model to look like the actual footage and actually fall the way that the World Trade Center Building 7 actually collapsed. There was only one way for them to make that happen. And that was they had to take out every major steel column supporting the building at the exact same time. So at the exact same time, they cause every single column that is supporting, every major support column, to fail in the exact same moment. It is impossible for localized fires to make that happen, for localized fires to basically cut the steel beams or destroy them or blow them up in a single moment at the same exact time. It's completely impossible for localized fires happening in different areas of the building to make that occur. I'm going to go back here. So what's the best explanation for what we're actually seeing? What did they simulate? Well, what they simulated, of course, was a controlled demolition. That's what a controlled demolition does. It uses detonators to simultaneously take out all of the support columns in the building at the exact same moment. And we can see that, of course, you've seen this footage over and over again. Let's look at another. This is a known controlled demolition. Don't blink. This is a really fast video. I'll rewind it here in a second. There it goes. Straight down, symmetrical. Put it back so you can see it one more time. Exactly like Building 7. Exactly like Building 7, what we're seeing right here, that symmetrical free fall event happening. And that is from the same event. Controlled demolition, taking out all the support structures in the same exact moment. So this, the government says, is being caused by a fire. But a fire is somehow, which you can see here, and you don't really see a fire occurring very much. You see some smoke. I'll get back to the fires in a second. So let's take a look at a building collapsing from a fire, just to compare. So we just looked at that controlled demolition, what that looks like. Here is what a 26-floor building in Brazil in 2018 collapsed from a fire. This is what that looks like right here. Take a look at this. just watch that one more time. You see this front part fall off. You see the building start to collapse in on itself, and then just the absolute fiery devastation there at the end. So that one actually looks a little bit more like the government model here on the right, with the way that it's asymmetrically falling apart. Completely asymmetrical collapse there, via a fire. And that of course is the government explanation, but that's not what the actual footage shows, and that's not what the University of Alaska Fairbanks model demonstrated was actually what caused it to fall in a symmetrical way. And so, well, did Building 7 catch on fire? Of course, Building 7 caught on fire. So here is Building 7 on fire. Notice a little bit of a difference between this and the Brazil video that I just showed you. These are the fires. And you can go look up all the footage. Even at its absolute worst, the fires of Building 7 are pretty minor in scale. And I will show you this actually. So just by comparison, and again, I talked about, this is a steel framed, well-built building that we've never seen an instance of other buildings collapsing from fires in the same way. So here's 3 examples, and there's 3 more on the next page. These are all steel framed high rises. One in 1988, one in 1991, one in 2004. These are multi-story, 62-story, 38-story, 56-story that burned for hours. This one burned for 18 hours, and it didn't collapse. None of these buildings, after being completely consumed, you can see this one completely consumed in flames, did not actually collapse because it's a steel frame building, and they're designed not to collapse. And even if they completely burn out, they're designed to allow for firefighters to go in and eventually get rid of the fire and for the entire building not to collapse. Here is just 3 more post 9/11. You can see these are completely engulfed in flames. What's crazy about Building 7, which you can see from the footage, but also there's eyewitness accounts, that when Building 7 collapsed, the fires had pretty much been burnt out. There weren't any, it wasn't engulfed in flames. So there's no fire really occurring, a major fire occurring on Building 7. And yet 7 hours afterwards, it just randomly has a completely symmetrical fall down that doesn't look anything. 1, the building doesn't seem to be majorly on fire. 2, even if it was majorly on fire, the collapse looks nothing like any of the collapses we've seen from buildings on fire. And 3, the steel framed portions of the building were designed not to fall in and collapse like that with fire anyways. So we're looking at something really bizarre here with Building 7. I really say the official narrative does not explain this very well at all. Again, this is the official narrative that we're looking at. And with your own eyes on the right, you can see that it just doesn't line up with reality, what we're actually seeing of how the building collapsed in and fell apart. And we're supposed to believe that this is localized fires that somehow made this very controlled demolition looking collapse. It's just bizarre. It's very, very bizarre. I'm going to show you guys some resources here at the end. You can go look at way, way more evidence, but just one more quick piece of evidence here that I just think is absolutely fascinating. Let's get into the main towers collapsing. So the official explanation of how the main towers collapsed is called the crushed down, crushed up theory. And you can see it in this diagram right here. So basically from the planes, you have the damage done to the upper portion, and there is a portion of the tower above, right, that is underneath it is now structurally damaged and eventually gives way. And now the upper portion of the tower, which of course is really heavy, concrete and steel, it begins to collapse down, and it acts as like a wrecking ball and collapses the rest of the building. And of course, it builds up more and more weight as the building collapses, eventually pulls the whole thing down. This is contingent on this upper piece here, this wrecking ball existing, right, and bringing down the rest of the building with it. And then down here at the bottom, of course, there is no, once you look at the wreckage footage, there is no top of the building that's just sitting down there. So their explanation is, well, it hits the ground and then it gets crushed up. And so then you don't see a visible top of the building anymore. Well, there's quite a few problems with this. This is actually from a paper. This is like the official paper that has done the math and explained exactly how this happened, and points out, exactly how this would work. So there's some issues with it though. So this is the Journal of Engineering Mechanics published a paper explaining this theory, the crushed down, crushed up theory. But many experts have pointed out that the paper, the math is correct. It's not like it's doing the calculations wrong. The calculations are all correct, but the paper is wrong because it starts with the wrong numbers. It starts at the beginning, just right off the basis, using the incorrect numbers to get to an incorrect conclusion. So what wrong numbers does it use? Well, one, this top portion up here, it nearly doubles the mass of the top section. It doubles what was known to be the top section, how many floors that was. It nearly doubles it in order for it to be a larger wrecking ball, in order for this to work. And the second thing it does is it reduces the column energy absorption by more than 3 times. So the steel columns that, of course, are preventing the building from collapsing are very good at absorbing energy and doing what they're supposed to do. They should have slowed down that collapse. But in order to get the math to work on this theory, they had to reduce the actual column strength, the actual energy absorption of those columns by 3 times, more than 3 times, actually. And many experts have pointed this out, and yet the paper is still pushed as the official explanation for how did this happen, what occurred on this. So one final note on this theory of the top wrecking ball coming down and smashing the tower. This is just absolutely fascinating. I'll get into where I got this evidence from in a second here. But what was essentially what that would be, it would be known as a gravitational collapse. Of course, the top portion starts to come down, and gravity is just pulling more and more layers of the building down, 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 and compresses the building downward. So this is actually really similar to an earthquake collapse. So right over here on the right, you can see an earthquake that has collapsed a 33-floor building. The problem is when you have an earthquake collapse like this, and you have that gravitational collapse as the beams weaken and then everything starts pulling down, and it just goes each floor down, 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 down. What you get at the bottom of the wreckage is what's known as pancaked concrete slabs, and you can see them right there. You see all those parallel slabs? It's like a stack of pancakes, one on top of another. So those are the concrete slabs. That's most of the weight that is actually being that wrecking ball pulling the building down, 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 down. Over here, you have the collapse of one of the Trade Center towers. There's no concrete slabs in the wreckage afterwards. And this is the whole explanation, is that wrecking ball type scenario of it's just hitting every level and bringing it down, 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 down. It would have had to have been the weight of the concrete in the building to be able to do that, to keep collapsing in the building down. But you get down to the bottom and there's no concrete slabs. So what happened to the concrete slabs, and what happened to the top portion of the building that's supposed to be pulling it down? Well, let's just take a quick look, and then I'll be done. Very quick look at the actual collapse of this building, and you can see something very bizarre happening. So pay attention here to the very top. This is supposed to be the wrecking ball that's bringing the entire building down. See what happens to it within a few seconds of the building collapsing. All right, let's do this one more time. You see this line right here? Everything above it? It all pulverizes. It's going down. It's going down. That top portion that's supposed to be the wrecking ball, it's gone. Within a few seconds of the video, it no longer exists. It's supposed to be the weight compressing the building. And yet in a few seconds, it doesn't even exist anymore. You can see it being pulverized. And for the rest of the video, this massive plumes and debris shooting out like a volcano it's the concrete of the building is being pulverized right before your eyes. It's just absolutely pulverizing, going away. There's no evidence in the video of a large section that was, maintained its integrity, that was coming down, right, as a sort of a wrecking ball and compressing. And you can see it here just one more time. That top portion of the building that's supposed to be so heavy, it's disappearing. It's disappearing in this cloud of smoke. And then if you watch all the footage of both of the towers, they collapse in this exact same way from the top to the bottom. It's like a disappearance occurring, and enormous amounts of concrete being just pulverized and sent and shot. I think it was like a 3-mile radius concrete dust found all the way around the entire wreckage site of just being blasted out. And so what we're looking at here, in my opinion, and it's not just my opinion, it's the opinion of numerous engineers and architects, that what we're looking at with our very eyes is a controlled demolition, that essentially there's detonators taking out each floor as it goes down. And that is the only explanation, the most viable explanation for what the video footage, for the collapse of the building. And, the math plays out with that one. But unfortunately, the official narrative, what they say is occurring, the math doesn't even work, because the only way to get the math to work, the numbers have to be off from the beginning to make that crush down theory, actually work. So that's it. That's the most uh, absolutely convincing evidence that I've seen. There's lots more. I don't want to make this video too lengthy. I do have to give credit where credit is due. I got most of the resources from this video from richardgage911.org. You should check out his website, where you can see a lot more evidence than even what I've shown. And recently he did an incredible interview on Redacted here, and you can go check that out on YouTube and other places, I'm sure, as well. And honestly, I really do have to just congratulate Richard Gage and people like him who've spent over 20 years looking into the fishy circumstances surrounding 9/11. You have convinced me. There is definitely something odd happening here, as I've gone through it, showing the collapse of Building 7, which again is hardly ever even mentioned, and the circumstances around it, and the explanation of a fire having somehow recreated a perfect symmetrical free fall drop that looks identical to a controlled demolition implosion of a building. And then there's numerous evidence of the weirdness of the main towers collapsing. What I showed there was just a little snippet about the whole the official paper being completely incorrect on its numbers, and then visually you can see that it's not true. It doesn't have the concrete slabs actually bringing down the weight of the building. It's being pulverized, and there's no slabs at the bottom like you usually have with a gravitational collapse. So there's a lot more weirdness to get into this, but this is enough for today's live stream. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Thank you for joining me. I'm Reese Black, and I will see you next time.